Men, what was the creepiest thing a woman has said or done to you? I had a girl in high school approach me during PE and ask if I was still inexperienced. Sheepishly, I confessed that I was, to which her next words were, "Can I have some of your blood?" I was obviously taken aback and I asked her why, and the next thing she told me was wild. She said, "Because I'm painting my room with the blood of the inexperienced." Cue awkward silence. Now, this girl was being really serious too. I asked her how she planned to get it, and she told me to meet her after class. I had a sort of morbid curiosity, so I met up with her and she brought a whole kit. I immediately backed out because, seriously, what the you know? Later that school year, we were placed on a group project and I was working with her on it. She invited me over to her house, and by this point, I kind of sort of forgot about the whole thing. When I got to her house, I immediately smelled something kind of foul. I couldn't place it, but decided to pass it off to the dilapidated state of the house, messy, crowded, and pretty unkempt. Until we got to her room, and when she opened the door, I saw a patch on one of her walls that was stained this ugly red-brown color, and it smelled so bad. It turns out everything she told me was pretty true. I booked out pretty quickly and never looked back. How could this dude forget about that thing in less than a year? That stuff would have stayed with me for a lot longer than that, and I would have certainly been reminded of it by the time I was partnered up with her in that group project. I mean, come on, girl who wants my blood. Hard to forget. Story 2. I had a girl who at work violated me and then accused me of pestering her. Luckily, it was all caught on camera. Nothing happened to her, though. I was the one who was going to get fired. I also had a girl try to violate me when she called and asked if she could crash at my place because I lived by the bars and she didn't want to drive home. She tried to kiss me but was a sloppy drunk, so I shut her down and she lost it. She said, "I've been with thousands of guys and no one ever turned me down." Then she shoved me to the couch and kept screaming obscenities over and over and over again. I finally got her off of me, and it's difficult when someone is in full psychotic rage even if you are substantially bigger than them. She grabbed something and slung it at me. I dove and she broke my roommate's lamp. The obscenities she was shouting were probably the creepiest too. I have no idea what they meant, but I guess there's only one way to interpret those two words together. I think the girl at work was even more evil, just trying to mess up my life for absolutely no reason. I have no idea what she was thinking either. The weirdest part about it is that she was always critical of me. We'd never really spoken until she overheard me saying I was married, and then she just started pressing me all day to the point where she bothered me at work by shooting balls of paper with a rubber band at me until I told her to stop, and then she popped rubber bands off my back as she walked off. I would have been screwed if all that wasn't caught on camera. Story 3. My first girlfriend in college abruptly broke up with me after 8 months. She told me it was a test to see if she could enjoy or handle dating before she decided to date the person she actually wanted to be with. She and the guy are married now. I didn't care that she left me. It was barely a year, so who cares? It just kind of stung to know I was just an experiment in my first relationship. My time was just totally wasted. She told me we could still be friends. I never spoke to her again. The guy she's with now was a childhood friend of hers. I'm assuming they talked about this and both wanted to see how she operated in a relationship. When I first asked to date her, she rejected me. The next day, she took me up on the offer. It's been 10 years since all of this. I'll never know for certain, but it's possible she spoke to him after initially rejecting me and cooking up that little plan. It's also much more bizarre now having to recount and think about this nearing my 30s. Story 4. I was a senior, and I started dating this junior but broke it off because she was demanding some crazy stuff. I don't remember exactly because what she did after is what stuck with me the most. My friends and I went through this phase where we would mess with each other's cars and windows with paint, disconnect the battery, and just do random harmless pranks. Well, I came out of my house and there were drawings all over my car. I asked all my friends who it was, but none of them confessed. It happened again the next day when I left for work. It happened a third time when I was with all the suspects at a restaurant and none of them went outside. This went on for about another month. We had been broken up for almost 2 months at this point, so I never suspected her. Finally, my neighbor told me it was the girl with the red car. I finally got her mom's number and told her I'd press charges if she didn't stop, so she finally did. That girl deserves a "Holla for Thug Nation" bumper sticker on her car. Story 5. My ex hacked into my home CCTV and watched me live my life for approximately 3 months or so. Worse, the login was passed in around her family, and my ex MIL commented on watching me during my private time. One time, my new girlfriend visited and the ex didn't like that one bit. The sale of the house hadn't been finalized yet, so technically it was still named to us both, even though she'd moved out months prior. The solution? She turned up with the extended family plus random work colleagues. and refused to leave the house until my girlfriend and I did. They also stole belongings that my girlfriend had with her and tried to drive away with them. I'd already called the police and they forced them to come back. It was then that I found out about the camera. They bragged about it as if it didn't make them the most insane people in the world, and I was thankful for having escaped that crazy show. They openly admitted watching me walk around exposed in front of the two police officers. And in hindsight, I could have pressed charges, but I just wanted out. 2 years later, I also discovered that on that evening, presumably, somebody in the family had gone to lengths to delete all my PS4 saved game data and block my friends. Like, what? I had to sell the house after that. It was disturbing on a level I just cannot even put into words. Story 6. A girl once pushed me into a dark closet in our school, but I couldn't tell who she was at the time. All she said was, "I want to take home the best part of you." I was so confused and honestly a bit excited because this came out of nowhere. Somebody opened the door, so I ran out of there and turned around to see a friend of mine walk out. She was the smartest girl in my class and I had never seen this side of her before. She was intense. After she saw that I seriously wasn't receptive to her approach, she got really quiet around me and wouldn't even look at me. I asked her why she did that and she mumbled something. She blurted out that she was sorry, she was trembling, she didn't tell me why she did it, she just kept apologizing. I walked away and found the nearest washroom so I could fix my clothes and figure out what to do next. I walked outside and skipped my classes that day. I didn't want to be around anyone. The next time we saw each other, things were awkward between us. She froze when she saw me, so I approached her and told her we needed to talk. All I wanted to know was, why did she think that was okay? She said that she liked me. Her friends hyped her up, telling her she could have her way with me because guys like that stuff. She cried and apologized again, and we were never the same after that, so I just kept my distance from her. Story 7. It's a toss-up. One accused me of violating her since I disappeared when she was stalking me. I joined the military months prior, thus why I disappeared, and she took it to court. The lawyers, police, and her family believed her until my friend testified that I was in the service several states away with plenty of witnesses. The other said, if I can't have you, then no one will. When I broke up with her, she got onto the army base, went past the charge at the quarters desk, and banged on my door. She could have had a weapon. I called the MPs, but she was in shape and ran to her car. About a month later, she tried to get me into an accident while I was rollerblading. My friend's story, though, is a lot worse. So he had a crazy ex who told him that she was allergic to lubricant and rubber. He was still using it, but he tied them off and threw them in her trash can after. She got pregnant, had a paternity test done, and he was the father of her child. He left the military and then called to give me an update. She confessed that she opened them up so he could be with her if she got pregnant. He told me before this ever went down that he would not abandon his kid like his father did to him. That last one makes Drake's putting hot sauce in used rubber sound like a pretty good idea right now. Story 8. I watched my brother's ex-girlfriend try to mess with his car but couldn't continue under pressure soon after they broke up. I'd been watching the movie on my laptop in the dark, so it looked like the house was empty. But there were 3 girls with her while she did it, and she left a heart-shaped cookie on the porch saying, "I miss you," and icing. I'd called my brother at the time asking what the hell I should do, but I didn't want to engage with her because she was a little cracked in the head, and she left before the police got there. I'm a woman and was only a couple of years younger than her at the time, but her actions still make no sense to me. Long story short, broken people with broken hearts are even more crazy than usual. Story 9. I was at a club with friends. There was this Portuguese girl I was massively crushing on, and she was into me as well, but we were both awkward morons. We made each other laugh pretty effortlessly and had amazing chemistry. Anyway, so there was also this tall, chubby Irish girl who had been hitting on me for a while. I kept rejecting her, and she waited until I was wasted, then followed me into the unisex bathroom and into a toilet stall because no and not interested apparently aren't understood by everyone. Anyhow, the fact that she violated me wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that my crush, the first time I was head over heels in love, straight up told me to my face that I was probably enjoying it. When I told her I was hammered and kept telling the other girl no, she and her entire friend group, whom I got along with great beforehand, started treating me like a war criminal right afterward. All of them, like no exceptions. She'd even go out of her way to try to use the next guy she ended up with into my face, to which I countered by meeting anyone willing and available to distract myself. Story 10. Working in IT in the early 2000s, I had to run some cables from a wall network point to a desk. I asked one woman, who must have been in her 40s but dressed like she was in her early 20s, if I could pop under her desk to run the cables. Her response was, Only if that's not all you do when you're down there. I told her I'd come back when she was at lunch and walked off. Maybe that lady needed some help vacuuming or hooking up the printer. If these stories are messing with your head just as they're doing with mine, please do keep watching, give them some love by liking this video, and also please do help me out by subscribing to my channel so I can be even more inspired to continue. Story 11. I had a coworker who wouldn't take no for an answer. She regularly asked me very probing personal questions, introduced me to her family, who also worked there, as if we weren't coworkers, and liked to touch me without asking. We were working late one night, and it was around 2 a.m. We worked at a convention center, and she parked in a free area that was quite a ways away, about 3/4 of a mile. It wasn't the nicest area in the city either. We were leaving, and she asked me to bring her to her car, to which I agreed. I had a parking pass for a ramp just across the street, so my car was a lot closer. When I got her to her car, she said she owed me and wanted to stay with me. She wouldn't get out of my car, insisting she pay me back by fooling around. I was quite naive then and froze in place, not knowing what to do. Fortunately, we didn't do anything serious. I didn't think about it at the moment, but a gender reversal in that situation would have had much different consequences, I'd like to think. A few years after that experience, I had another coworker who was just plain nuts and started giving me worse vibe than the one above. She was a compulsive liar, and I knew it. The first time I met her, I was training her, and she gave her life story about her cruel ex, how she had 2 kids at a young age and had her first seizure the night before, so she was exhausted. She also started getting quite heated towards me. She thought it was unacceptable for men to reject her because she already had kids. I disagreed completely. It was a very awkward and creepy conversation on its own. In truth, however, she had no kids and had begun having seizures regularly for years as she was epileptic. She started doing me favors like getting me food without asking and giving me small gifts, and she pulled my phone number off of the work computer. Employees are on call in that line of work, so everyone's phone numbers were saved on the work computers, and she added me on Snapchat without even asking me first. At the time, I was desperate for regular friends, so I naively accepted it, and then she began sending me photos. It would be pretty messed up if the roles were reversed. These interactions, among others, have had a significant effect on how I form relationships with women, and that means it ain't good. Story 12. Me and this girl next door went down the road to an abandoned church. We got to making out, and she started kissing me around my lower abs. She then bit into that little pinch of fat to the side of my belly button, and it hurt. At first, I tried to block it out and focus on something else, but then again, bam, she's latched onto me that I instinctively had to shove her head away from me by palming her forehead and just pushing as hard as I could. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "You clearly liked it," pointing at my chubby. I looked down and saw little wounds in my chest, to which I yelled, "Demon wagon," and ran home. I still have scarred bite marks on my chest 14 years later. Play biting is one thing, but she gave me a fear in that moment I had never felt before. Story 13. Nothing too wild, but I had a woman message me asking me to come over and have fun with her. She kept sending photos and videos of herself to the point where I was seriously turned off. Once I told her I was not interested, she started bombarding me with hate messages in between sending me more photos, etc. According to her, men aren't allowed to reject her advances. Damn, that's some pretty crazy stuff right there. Story 14. So I met a girl on Tinder. She's cute and gothy, and she seemed pretty cool. We met for coffee, and pretty much the whole time she spoke about morbid stuff and showed me pictures on her phone of random stuff she'd seen. Whatever, maybe she was nervous or trying to seem edgy or something, so I kept messaging her for a bit. And then for our second date, she wanted to go to a crematorium to watch because she knew a guy who'd let her in. Firstly, no. Secondly, I am 108% sure that crematoriums do not work that way, so either I was being lured somewhere for some reason, or she was nuts and I'd be feeding her delusion. Needless to say, there was no second date. Story 15. A woman made me do various things when I was young. She was much older than me, I think. I thought it was normal that youngish women take boys and force them to do horrible, disgusting things. I didn't even know there was anything sensual about what she made me do. It was just more and more disgusting. I was terrified. And she said I was a disgusting little creep for going along with all the things she made me do. And then I hated myself and stayed away from other people because I thought I would be doing them a favor. Story 16. I had a girlfriend who wasn't always around, so to not bother her too much and to not seem too needy, I talked to people on Omegle. One night, I got talking to this girl on text chat. She's cool and genuinely nice, so I gave her my Tumblr. As soon as she saw what it looked like, the creepiness began. It's like she flipped a switch from the sweet, nice girl I'd met and became someone else. She tried to entice me, sending me photos I did not want or ask for. When I said no and told her to stop, she wouldn't take no for an answer or relent. She told me she got off on making good guys do bad things, especially making boyfriends cheat. I ended up having to block her. I remember sitting there for a minute thinking, this is probably what women experience with creepy dudes, just a lot more often. And it was also a kind of realization that women can also be messed up, creepy weirdos. I hadn't considered it before. Story 17. The manager at my job cornered me in the storage room and offered to give me the shifts I wanted if I let her do what she wanted with me and maybe do more if I was interested. I was in my early 20s then, and she was several decades older. I noped out of there as quick as possible and started looking for a better job. In retrospect, it was quite sad to see how desperate she was. Most of my friends asked me if she was hot. I bet they wouldn't be saying the same if my manager had been a gay man. They'd call him a disgusting creep. Story 18. I'm snipped and I make it clear on my Tinder that I do not have nor do I want kids. So I went out on 3 dates with this awesome woman and I really started liking her. On the third date, she mentioned she had 2 kids, so I asked why she was into me, given that I did not want kids. She hit me up with, once you meet my adorable kids and see how good of a mother I am, I know you would want to have kids with me. I got up and left after that. Story 19. Halfway through our first date, she tells me, Jesus told me about you and I can't wait to meet our children. I mean, I'm totally fine with a woman having religion and that being important to her, regardless of which religion. But if you tell me God is talking to you about me, that's a deal breaker. This dude should counter with, you're the one Satan told me about, eh? Story 20. I had my eyes on you since you were young. I can't believe we're finally getting to have some fun. Those words messed me up for a while. It wasn't creepy in the moment, but now, she was almost 20 years older than me and married. I'm not proud of it. Story 21. So my ex decided to tell me that she used to stalk me online for years before we got together. We didn't break up because of that, though. We did because it turned out she was exchanging private photos with close friends of mine, and one of them felt guilty and decided to tell me. Concerning the online stalking, she told me that she used to constantly look at my profile on MySpace, that's how far back it went, and Facebook at everything I'd post or write to other people and stuff like that, so she'd know where I was, what I was doing, and who I was talking to almost at all times. Story 22. I told a woman that I was dating that I was not home and that we would talk tomorrow. She told me, while on the phone, that she knew I was lying. While I was puzzled, I paid it no mind. The next day, she called at 6 a.m. and said that she wanted to come over. Again, I told her that I would call when I woke up, and her response was, "You're not at home." This struck me as odd and unexpected, so I asked her how she knew. She refused to tell me, so I told her that she was creeping me out and that we shouldn't see each other anymore. For that full week, I was nonplussed by her ability to know my comings and goings. So I started checking around my house and my car. I found that my car had a tracking device, so then I started sweeping everything. This brought me to the house next door, which had been vacant for a year. I snooped around the yard and then the house. I noticed that the for rent sign had been taken down, so I picked up the front door lock off to the adjacent house and walked in. It was empty, except for a table recording device, a pair of binoculars, a Sony camera, and the lease paperwork. The table had a notebook and was filled with entries from my daily events. She had a map and timelines that included all family and friends and the license plate numbers of all the cars. I was horrified. I felt very, very uneasy. So I called the police, and as far as I know, they still have not caught her. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the creepy people in this video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you're also going to enjoy How Did You Know That You Were Dating a Psycho? The girl in Story 6 is incredibly entertaining, but even more frustrating. I'll see you in that video, and thank you for watching this one.